On the channel, I have covered all the Templars in the first 4 Assassin's Creed games, and so I feel like it is only right that I do the same, but for the Assassins. Also, I'm going to say now, Altaïr himself will not be in the video, as he deserves his own dedicated video in the future. With all that said though, let's just begin with Malik. Malik was born into the Assassin Order in 1165. He was the son of Fahim al-Sayf and was trained in the ways of the Brotherhood from a young age. By 1191, he had risen to a high rank within the order. His younger brother Kadar was also born into the Assassins, though he held a lower rank. Fiercely protective of him, Malik was careful not to involve Kadar too deeply in dangerous missions and often coached him on proper assassin conduct. In 1191, Malik, Kadar and Altaïr were assigned what al-Muwalim described as the most important mission the Brotherhood had ever undertaken, recovering a priceless artifact from Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. The trio infiltrated the underground passages beneath the temple, where they encountered an elderly man. Altaïr killed him with his hidden blade, an act that Malik immediately condemned as unnecessary and a violation of the creed's first tenet. Altaïr brushed off the criticism, insisting his methods were superior. Frustrated by Altaïr's arrogance and Kadar's admiration for him, Malik pushed ahead alone to scout the area. Eventually, the three reached an alcove overlooking part of the temple and were stunned by what appeared to be the Ark of the Covenant. Their discovery was cut short by the arrival of Rauf Désilets and 4 Templar knights. Malik urged Altaïr to stay back, but he ignored the warning and confronted Désilets head-on. Altaïr was swiftly overpowered and thrown from the room, the exit collapsing behind him and trapping Malik and Kadar inside. The Templars then attacked, killing Kadar and severely wounding Malik. Despite his injuries, Malik managed to seize the artifact and escape, with the Templars in pursuit. He returned to Mashaf and immediately reported to al-Muwalim, arriving badly wounded and furious to find Altaïr already there. Malik openly blamed Altaïr for Kadar's death. He then presented al-Muwalim with the treasure that Altaïr had failed to retrieve, bitterly referring to Altaïr as the mentor's favourite. However, Malik also revealed grim news. The Templars had followed him back to Mashaf and were launching an attack on the village below. After parting ways with Altaïr and al-Muwalim, Malik was taken to be treated for his wounds. Unfortunately, the surgeons were unable to save his arm and it had to be amputated. With the loss of his arm leaving him unable to operate in the field, Malik was reassigned as a leader of the Assassin Bureau in Jerusalem. When Altaïr later arrived in the city on assignment, Malik treated him with open contempt, making no effort to hide his resentment. As they discussed the assassination of Talal, Malik openly criticised Altaïr's technique and mindset. Although the mission succeeded, Malik sharply reprimanded him for triggering the city alarm and drawing unwanted attention to assassin activity in Jerusalem. Malik encountered Altaïr again when he was sent to assassinate Majd-ad-Din. While Malik had not forgiven Altaïr for his past failures, he showed a hint of approval when Altaïr asked for guidance rather than demand it. After Majd-ad-Din's death, Malik acknowledged that Altaïr had carried out the mission exactly as an assassin should. By the time Altaïr returned to the Jerusalem Bureau for a third visit, this time to eliminate Rauf Désilets, Malik greeted him with respect. Before leaving, Altaïr apologised for his actions at Solomon's temple. Malik refused the apology, explaining that Altaïr was no longer the same man he had been back then, and therefore should not carry that guilt. He declared that they were brothers bound by the creed, and as such, they were one. Following the confrontation at Majd-ad-Din's funeral, Altaïr returned to the Bureau and told Malik about Désilets' deception and the information obtained from his double. Malik urged him to return to Mashaf and speak with al-Muwalim, but Altaïr refused, arguing that Malik was using the creed as a shield and failing to see the full truth. Malik struggled to respond as Altaïr urged him to investigate the Templar treasure through Jerusalem's contacts, while he pursued Désilets himself. While Altaïr travelled to al-Sayf, Malik returned to Solomon's temple and uncovered Rauf Désilets' journal. It detailed the discovery of the Piece of Eden by 10 Templars, including al-Muwalim. Finally convinced of his mentor's betrayal, Malik set out for Mashaf, bringing several assassins under his command to help Altaïr reclaim the fortress. Malik reached Mashaf just in time to save Altaïr, who was being overwhelmed by a group of assassins enslaved by al-Muwalim's control. Malik and the loyal assassins with him hurled knives at the attackers, driving them off and giving Altaïr a moment to recover. The two greeted each other warmly, each remarking that the other's presence brought a sense of calm to the battlefield. After Altaïr's final duel with al-Muwalim, Malik arrived in time to witness the Piece of Eden project a holographic map of the world, revealing the locations of other artifacts. He initially rushed to Altaïr's side, but slowed to a stunned halt as he took in the sight of the map. Soon after, Altaïr sent Malik back to Jerusalem to inform the assassins there of al-Muwalim's death. After al-Muwalim's defeat and Altaïr's rise to mentor, Malik became his closest ally and right-hand man. The two worked closely together, developing new assassination techniques that Altaïr carefully documented in his personal journal. Around this time, Altaïr began spending long periods studying the Apple of Eden, trying to uncover its secrets. Both Malik and Altaïr's wife, Maria Thorpe, grew uneasy with how deeply the artifact consumed him, often distracting him from eating or resting. They urged Altaïr to seal the apple away, but he ultimately ignored their concerns. In 1217, Altaïr, Maria, and their son Darim had left for Mongolia to confront the growing threat of Genghis Khan, leaving Malik in temporary command of the order. Years later, in 1225, Abbas Sophian staged a coup. He had Altaïr's other son Sayf murdered, planted the weapon in Malik's bed, and arranged false testimony from a spy who claimed Malik and Sayf had argued over control of the Brotherhood. As a result, Malik was framed for the murder and imprisoned beneath Mashaf. When Altaïr and his family returned in 1228, Abbas attempted to manipulate them into believing that Malik had murdered Altaïr's son. Grief-stricken, Altaïr nearly accepted the accusation, but Maria sharply reprimanded him for trusting Abbas over Malik. This forced Altaïr to reconsider, and he secretly infiltrated Mashaf's prison, where he found Malik in terrible condition and brought him back to their quarters. While Maria cared for him in captivity, Malik explained how Abbas had been working to undermine him for years and ultimately set him up for Sayf's death. He mourned his own failures as a leader, believing that such an outcome would never have occurred under Altaïr's guidance. After Malik fell asleep, Altaïr and Maria left to confront Abbas. In their absence, Abbas's spy, Swami, murdered Malik and severed his head, and then delivered it to Abbas in a sack. Abbas later presented the grisly proof to Altaïr and Maria, attempting to accuse them of treason. Many years later, after returning from exile, Altaïr noticed a young assassin following him through the streets of Mashaf. The boy revealed himself to be Malik's son, Tazim, a revelation that moved Altaïr to tears. Swearing loyalty to Altaïr, Tazim pledged to help reclaim the order and avenge his father's death. Alongside other assassins still loyal to Altaïr, they launched an uprising against Abbas, ultimately restoring control of the Brotherhood. Kadar was the younger son of the master assassin Fahim al-Sayf, and he was raised within the walls of the assassin fortress at Mashaf along with his older brother Malik. From a young age, he trained to join the Brotherhood, preparing for the day he would be sent out on missions of his own. Kadar idolised Altaïr, seeing him as the ultimate example of an assassin's skill. He tried to imitate Altaïr whenever possible. While Malik resented Altaïr for his arrogance, Kadar ignored his brother's warnings and chose to follow Altaïr's teachings instead of Malik's more careful and disciplined approach. In 1191, Kadar was assigned to a mission alongside Malik and the master assassin Altaïr. He was not briefed on the details beforehand and openly questioned Altaïr about what the three of them were meant to accomplish inside Solomon's temple. By this point, Kadar had proven himself capable with his weapons and was considered skilled enough to take on dangerous assignments. At the time of his death, he carried a hidden blade, throwing knives, and a sword, equipment reserved only for assassins who had demonstrated their competence and earned their rank. Unfortunately, as detailed in Malik's story, Kadar lacked the battlefield experience needed to survive being overwhelmed by multiple enemies at once. He was killed during the chaos inside Solomon's temple, though it remains unclear whether Malik escaped before or after his brother's death. Rauf was a member of the Levantine Brotherhood of Assassins and served as a combat instructor for new recruits. In 1191, he was the first to welcome Altaïr back to Mashaf following the failed mission at Solomon's Temple. Not long after Altaïr's return, the Templar Order launched an attack on Mashaf, tearing through the village below the fortress. Rauf met Altaïr at the gates and explained that civilians were still trapped in the village. He asked Altaïr to draw the Templars' attention while he and several others escorted the villagers to safety inside the fortress walls. Once the civilians were secured, Rauf regrouped with Altaïr and relayed that al-Muwalim had devised a plan to drive the Templars out. To demonstrate their fearlessness, Rauf, Altaïr, and another assassin performed a leap of faith together. While Altaïr and Rauf landed safely in hay bales, the third assassin broke his leg, prompting Rauf to stay behind and tend to him, while Altaïr carried out the final phase of the plan. After these events, Rauf could be often found training recruits in the fortress courtyard, and would occasionally ask Altaïr to demonstrate his skills to inspire the students. When al-Muwalim later betrayed the order, Rauf remained loyal to Altaïr and eventually became one of his close friends. Sometime between 1217 and 1227, while Altaïr, his wife, and their first son were travelling to Mongolia, Rauf was murdered by Swami, the right-hand man of Abbas Sophian. Upon Altaïr's return, Swami claimed that Rauf had died of fever, but Altaïr strongly suspected that his friend had been killed during Abbas's coup to seize control of the Brotherhood. Jamal was a member of the Levantine Brotherhood of Assassins who served under al-Muwalim during the time of the Third Crusade. By 1191, however, Jamal and a Masjaf herald named Masoon had secretly made contact with the Templar order. The two eventually adopted Templar ideology and began operating as covert agents within the assassin stronghold. To communicate without raising suspicion, they relied on a local basket weaver to pass messages between them. Their betrayal became especially significant in July when a Templar force led by Grandmaster Robert Désilets attacked Masjaf in an attempt to reclaim the Apple of Eden. To aid the invasion, Jamal sent a letter to Masoon, once again through the basket weaver, ordering him to open the gates and allow the Templars into the village. Despite this act of treachery and the heavy loss suffered by the assassins, the Templars were ultimately driven back. In the aftermath, Altaïr was stripped of his rank and reduced to a novice. As the first step towards redemption, he was given the task of identifying the traitor who had betrayed the Brotherhood. Masoon attempted to flee, hiding coins near a dead cypress tree and writing a letter to Jamal instructing him to take the money and escape to Damascus, where further contact would follow once things had settled down. Jamal never received the message, however, as Altaïr pickpocketed it from a basket weaver shortly after Masoon handed it over. This allowed Altaïr to uncover the identity of Masoon's accomplice. During his interrogation, Masoon revealed Jamal as his co-conspirator, despite expressing concern for Jamal's safety in his letter. After Masoon's death, al-Muwalim decided that Jamal's capture would not be Altaïr's responsibility, assigning him to a different mission instead. Although Jamal had betrayed the order, al-Muwalim was willing to consider granting him amnesty if it was proven that he had acted under coercion or deception. Mercy, however, would not be shown if Jamal had willingly supported the Templars. As Altaïr departed Masjaf on his way to Damascus to assassinate Tamir, he passed Jamal still standing at his post outside the village, continuing to pose as a loyal assassin. Jabal was born sometime before the 1150s and went on to become a Rafiq and bureau leader in Accra during the Third Crusade. Before Altaïr lost his rank of Master Assassin following the incident at Solomon's Temple, Jabal, like the other bureau leaders, would simply provide Altaïr with the information he needed to carry out his assassinations, rather than making him uncover it for himself. After Altaïr's demotion, however, Jabal and the other Rafiqs pushed him to investigate his targets thoroughly on his own, both to sharpen his skills and to strip away the arrogance that had led to his earlier failure. When Altaïr came to Accra to assassinate his first target, Garnier de Naples, Jabal appeared impressed that the former Master Assassin claimed to have already gathered enough intelligence to proceed safely. After questioning him further, Jabal granted permission to carry out the kill. Altaïr later returned to Jabal while hunting the 9 Templars, this time targeting William of Montferrat. Jabal greeted him by noting that the word of his actions had begun to spread and admitted that after hearing of Altaïr's failure at Solomon's Temple, he had initially lost faith in him. Still, he acknowledged Altaïr's apparent sincerity in seeking redemption. Jabal shared what he knew of the target before sending Altaïr out to gather more information on his own. When Altaïr returned and reported his findings, Jabal listened carefully, then gave him leave to act and handed him a feather to mark with his target's blood. On Altaïr's third visit to Accra to assassinate Sibrand, Jabal was notably more somber, nodding gravely at the mention of the target's name. When Altaïr explained that he had already learned much about Sibrand, Jabal was clearly impressed, but pressed him to share every detail before giving him the feather and warning him to stay alert. As Altaïr turned to leave, Jabal apologised for ever doubting his dedication to the assassin cause. Altaïr had responded that the fault had been his own, and that Jabal owed him nothing. Jabal later took part in the retaking of Masjaf and was among the few assassins unaffected by the Apple of Eden's influence. After helping save Altaïr from several entranced assassins, Jabal, alongside Malik and others, held off the controlled assassins while Altaïr confronted al-Muwalim. Following al-Muwalim's death, unrest broke out among both assassins and civilians, who refused to accept the truth of his betrayal. Throughout the riots, Jabal remained loyal to Altaïr and helped to restore order within the Brotherhood. Abbas Sophian was born in Masjaf in 1166, the son of Ahmad Sophian, a member of the Assassin Order. He spent the first decade of his life living with his father until 1176 when everything changed. During the siege of Masjaf that year, Ahmad was captured by Saracen forces and tortured. Under duress, he revealed the name of Umar ibn La'ahad as the assassin responsible for killing a Saracen nobleman. To spare Ahmad's life, Umar willingly accepted execution. Consumed by guilt over Umar's death, Ahmad later took his own life in the quarters of Umar's son, Altaïr. Abbas, however, was never told the truth and was raised believing that his father had simply left the order and would one day return. Following this, Abbas was paired with Altaïr, and the two began training together under their mentor, Al-Muwalim. They quickly became close friends, spending most of their time together and referring to each other as brothers. Still, the belief that his father had abandoned him weighed heavily on Abbas and never truly left his mind. Over time, Altaïr noticed a shift in Abbas's behaviour as the emotional strain began to take its toll. Hoping to ease his friend's pain, Altaïr eventually told Abbas the truth, that his father had not deserted him, but had instead taken his own life in Altaïr's chambers shortly after the Saracen siege. Abbas refused to believe him and turned away in silence. The following day during combat training, Abbas asked their instructor, Labib, for permission to train with real swords, a request that Labib eagerly approved. Instead of sparring normally, Abbas launched a furious attack on Altaïr, demanding to know why he had lied about his father. Altaïr reluctantly claimed that he had lied. As punishment, both boys were thrown into Mashraf's cells for a month. When training resumed, Abbas faced further consequences. Al-Muwalim ruled that Abbas had disgraced the order by letting his emotions control him, and decreed that his training would be extended by an additional year. After these events, the bond between Abbas and Altaïr was effectively broken, and neither saw the other as a brother anymore. When Abbas was around 23 years old, Mashraf came under attack by Templars led by Haras, a former assassin apprentice who had betrayed the order after growing disillusioned with its ideals and his slow rise through the ranks. Abbas fought alongside his fellow assassins to defend the fortress. When Altaïr arrived in the midst of the battle, Abbas met with him and urged a retreat, explaining that the Templars had captured Al-Muwalim and there was nothing that they could do to save him. Altaïr ignored the warning and instead ordered Abbas to flank the Templars once he had pushed them out of the castle. Despite his objections, Abbas was forced to comply as Altaïr outranked him. Altaïr ultimately succeeded in rescuing Al-Muwalim, and soon after he was elevated to the rank of Master Assassin. Consumed by jealousy, Abbas spat at Altaïr's feet, a gesture that was met with scorn from the other assassins. After Al-Muwalim's death, Abbas returned to Mashraf and encountered Altaïr at the castle gates, where he saw his longtime rival carrying the body of their fallen mentor. Suspicious and openly hostile, Abbas demanded an explanation as the two made their way to the funeral pyre prepared on a cliff overlooking the fortress. When Altaïr set Al-Muwalim's body ablaze, Abbas confronted him, insisting that cremation was forbidden by the order. Altaïr defended his actions, arguing that the corpse could have been yet another of Al-Muwalim's illusions, and that he couldn't risk giving his former mentor a chance to return. Furious by this, Abbas shoved Altaïr off the cliff, leaving him to face the anger of both civilians and fellow assassins below. Abbas then rushed to Al-Muwalim's study where he stole the Apple of Eden before climbing to the top of the watchtower overlooking Mashraf. From there, he gazed out over the unrest he had helped ignite, shouting at Altaïr and claiming that he lacked the strength to wield the apple. Moments later, Abbas succumbed to the artifact's influence and activated it himself. The power of the apple quickly proved too much for him. Unable to withstand its effects, Abbas began to weaken as the artifact slowly drained his life. Seeing this, Altaïr rushed up the tower and took the apple from him. In the aftermath, Abbas quickly apologised. As time went on, Altaïr secured the full support of the Brotherhood and formally became mentor of the Levantine assassins. Abbas continued to serve the Assassin Order loyally for many years, even as Altaïr took on the role of mentor. However, after Altaïr departed for the Far East in 1217, Abbas gradually began rallying support among the people to weaken the authority of the acting leader, Malik. By around 1226, Abbas was actively laying the groundwork for a coup to seize control of the Brotherhood. As part of his plan, Abbas ordered his subordinate Swami, a weak-willed apprentice, to murder Altaïr's younger son, Sayf, and frame Malik for the crime. Malik was subsequently found guilty and thrown into the dungeons beneath Mashraf. With Malik imprisoned and no clear leader in place, a ruling council was formed in accordance with the Brotherhood's laws, and Abbas positioned himself as its head. In 1228, Altaïr, his wife Maria, and their eldest son Darim returned from their decade-long journey to the Far East, completely unaware of what had unfolded in their absence. Upon arriving at Mashraf, Altaïr was told that Sayf had recently left for Alamut. At Altaïr's request, Darim departed immediately to find him. The following day, Altaïr and Maria met with Abbas and the ruling council. During the meeting, Abbas revealed that Sayf had been murdered 2 weeks earlier and claimed that Malik was responsible, explaining that the council had been established after Malik's arrest. Altaïr demanded that control of the order be returned to him, but Abbas refused, arguing that Altaïr could not remain impartial so soon after his son's death and might act out of revenge. The next day, after learning the true details surrounding Sayf's murder, Altaïr went to the dungeons to see Malik, finding him severely weakened and clearly imprisoned far longer than Abbas had claimed. Altaïr freed Malik and left him in the care of his family. Determined to expose the truth, Altaïr confronted Abbas once again. Abbas responded by turning the assassins against him, accusing Altaïr of murdering Malik in vengeance and publicly displaying Malik's severed head as supposed proof. In reality, Malik had been executed by Swami on Abbas's orders. A brief struggle followed, resulting in the deaths of both Swami and Maria. With the Brotherhood turned against him, Altaïr was forced to flee Mashaf and Abbas seized the title of Mentor. 20 years passed before Abbas encountered Altaïr again. During his rule, the assassins withdrew almost entirely into their fortress, leaving the surrounding countryside at the mercy of Fahad's bandits. At the same time, Abbas imposed increasingly heavy levies on the local population and responded to any hint of rebellion with harsh paranoid crackdowns. In 1247, Abbas learned that Altaïr had returned from exile, determined to reclaim leadership of the order. With the aid of Tazim, the son of Malik, Altaïr rallied many assassins to his cause, while making it clear that no blood was to be shed. This commitment to pacifism caused the majority of Abbas's supporters to abandon him and side with Altaïr. Abbas confronted his old rival on the steps of the Mashaf fortress. Still unwilling to accept the truth surrounding his father's death, Abbas ordered his few remaining followers to kill Altaïr. Altaïr instead stepped forward, extending one arm toward Abbas, gripping his wrist with the other. Moments later, an explosion rang out through the castle. Looking down, Abbas saw a small stain of blood bloom on his chest, quickly spreading until his robes were soaked. He collapsed and tumbled down the steps to Altaïr's feet, where he spoke his final words. Abbas expressed hope that there might be a second life after death, one in which he and Altaïr could meet again and where he might finally learn the truth about his father. With that, he closed his eyes and died, becoming the first victim of Altaïr's newly developed hidden gun. The first Assassin's Creed game doesn't have that many named assassins, however that will change in the next part of the series, where I'll go over all of the assassins in the Ezio trilogy. If you are interested in that, then please subscribe and turn notifications on so you will know when the video is released. I hope you enjoyed the video, have a great rest of your day, and thank you for watching.